So at 7 o'clock tonight, in over 1,500 locations across Iowa, people will gather, there'll be speeches made, and people will vote, and they'll choose who's their favourite person to be the Republican Party candidate for the election, in the general election in November. Well, I'm joined by Jason Miller, senior advisor to Donald J. Trump. And Jason, 2016, Ted Cruz won Iowa, beat Trump. You're feeling pretty optimistic, I think, today.
Feeling pretty good today. And so make sure folks in the UK know this is the first contest in the series to decide who's ultimately going to be the next Republican nominee and then President of the United States for the single day voting this fall, or the period, but you have the one kind of ultimate general election. So the polling numbers look good. Our grassroots team is good. That's the difference between 2016 and now, is the structure, the turnout operation, because it's not as simple as just showing up and dropping off a ballot. You show up to a gymnasium or some local auditorium, you get together with your neighbors, you pick who the winner is going to be, and it's a lengthier process. So it's different than just drop that ballot and move on. So organization makes all the difference.
Yeah, and I guess, Trump was very, very new at all of this back in 2016 and didn't have much experience. And so, I get it. I mean, his team is much more, I have to say, Jason, you guys are doing a very good job for him at the moment. His team is a lot more professional. How's he feeling about things?
He's feeling pretty good. And, one of the things I say is, yes, of course, I'm part of his team. I'm one of his advisors. But it's always top-down leadership in these. President Trump, this is his third time running for president, so he knows it. He's not a rookie. He's a veteran now. He knows how this works. The other thing, too, is a lot of the Trump supporters are very experienced as well. They've shown up to the rallies. They've camped out overnight. They've stood in line for hours. So when you talk about really a key indicator, we have data points for hundreds of thousands of Iowans and know how to talk to them, how to communicate with them. We're pretty confident. If you're going to camp out overnight for Trump rally tickets, you'll show up to caucus.
Now, the number that was suggested to me earlier by JL Partners, the polling firm, was that if Trump got less than 40%, questions would be asked, but if he got more than 50%, it's game over. Is that about right?
Don't go and raise expectations on me. I'm happy with a win. I'll take a win is a win is a win. So folks know that the record margin is 12 points from first place to second place. That was 1988. No Republican has ever gone above 50% in that threshold. So to the point that the pollster was saying 50% would be a smash record. Anything in between. But you know what? I am happy with just the win. Let's start with the win, then we'll go win in New Hampshire.
Now, a little bit of a thought about the other candidates here. Haley clearly has picked up some support. DeSantis, by some measures, has disappointed. Ramaswamy makes a lot of noise, but shows great energy. But it does seem, Jason, looking at it, that it's all really pretty personal. Between, Donald Trump, particularly Donald Trump and DeSantis, it's very personal, isn't it?
Well, I would. One could guess that if you read between the lines.
No,
or just
I don't need to read. Just listen to what he says, for goodness sake.
He calls him Rob DeSanctimonious.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't change someone's name to DeSanctimonious. But here's the thing: President Trump effectively handpicked Rob DeSantis to be the Republican nominee and then help him winning governor in 2018, and also with his reelect then in 2022. He picked Nikki Haley, who was then the governor of South Carolina, to then be his ambassador to the United Nations. So here are two folks who really owe their political careers to him, but now they're challenging him. And in a couple cases, they've gotten quite nasty about it.
So he feels let down by them.
I think he's disappointed, but also I think a bit, maybe a little more ornery than that when we talk about just the fact that these folks should have been helping him to win, because every dollar, every minute that is spent running against Rob DeSantis or Nikki Haley, it could be time or money spent on Joe Biden. And that's really what when you look at the thing, Nigel, that really made the polling take off, it was when people started seeing the general election polling of President Trump beating Joe Biden. That's when people said, let's rally around him, let's unify, because what Joe Biden has done to this country is pretty disastrous.
We're going to come to that. The other candidate that interests me is, I mentioned it earlier, Ramaswamy. And he says, look, I am MAGA. I am very much on the same ticket as Donald Trump. I believe in the same values and the same things as Donald Trump. I'm just a different generation. Is he potentially He's more of an ally than an opponent here, isn't he, really?
No, but he's gotten a little bit too cute, and that's where you saw President Trump turn his sights on him within the last couple of days here. Ramaswamy was having his people wear T-shirts that were saying, "Save Trump, vote Vivek." And so, he was caught on video talking to a lady saying that unless you vote for me, then they're going to take the nomination away from President Trump, give it to Nikki Haley, who's a globalist warmonger.
That's his story, yeah.
And it was way too cute. And at that point, I think that's where President Trump said, "Hey, enough is enough. I got to go and let people know that this is."
So he just
cute.
sort of tapped him down a little bit.
I think that's probably a polite way to say it, but this is when President Trump does it, it's like Thanos from the Avengers.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. Although I do think that Ramaswamy has a future in the conservative movement here in America.
I think he has a very good line, very good delivery. I think he's going to have to grow up a bit as a candidate, but I'm worried more about President Trump, and I'll no more free advice for Mr. Ramaswamy.
That was funny. I got to Chicago, flew out on Saturday, got to Chicago. The rest of the journey was a nightmare. But literally, I walked out of the front doors of Chicago Airport. I walked a few yards up to the left, where I was confronted by a drug-crazed person. I mean, literally out of his head. He started kind of squaring up to me. And you think, well, how do I handle this? He might have a knife in his pocket. As it was, he was so out of his head. So I was able to very quickly walk round. And there we are. That happened to me on Saturday in Chicago at the airport. The situation with law and order in America's cities is disturbing, to say the least. And yet, I didn't hear Trump talking about that much yesterday.
He's worked it in quite a bit of late because the open border situation we have where people are coming in unvetted, and to put in comparison, we're at 10,000 people a day coming across. That's 300,000 then in a month, over 3 million in a year. And those are just the ones that we think are coming through, completely unvetted. A lot of these people are not coming from Central America or South America either. A lot of people coming from Asia, a lot of people coming from Africa, completely unvetted. I know the UK has its own crisis with people coming across in the inflatables.
But nothing like the crisis here.
Nothing like this. I mean, this is because you can cross over by land. This is pretty dangerous. So when we see the fentanyl use, the drug use, the crime, the homelessness, all these different things going on, it's really quite scary. And I know President Trump in the past has always said that Paris isn't Paris anymore. That was a frequent refrain in the 2016 campaign. Sadly, New York isn't New York anymore. Chicago isn't Chicago anymore. Every big American major city is in dire straits right now.
Yeah, I mean, very serious. It's a very serious situation. And yet, Jason, I understand the upset that's being felt by tens of millions of Americans about this. Has Trump got solutions to this?
Absolutely. Well, big part is we got to secure the border. That's the number one.
How do you do that physically?
Well, finish the wall. We go and actually get with Title 42 and remain in Mexico. Those are two big steps. But the other thing, too, is we have to send the message that if people get here, they're not going to be just showered with all sorts of benefits and be allowed to have several years until they actually have a deportation hearing. We'll have the largest deportation effort in American history. Get that going. So that's part of it. The other thing, too, is the economy. You look at so much of it. It's not just the border. The border is a big part, but you look especially in our urban centers where inflation has priced people out of their homes. That's why you see homelessness spiking. Number one thing you can do on inflation, if you're an executive, is with energy. To go and get energy costs down. You get the cost of gas down, all energy.
Hence the Trump refrain, drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill. So those are the big things that he can do on day one. And I think that's also what sets him apart from anyone else is since he's been president, we know how he's going to govern. A lot of these things you can do by executive order, meaning the president can just sign it as opposed to having to go to Congress and take months or even years to try to get it done. So day one, he can do something about inflation, and he can do something about the border.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question, bar some extraordinary event, he's going to win tonight. He's going to be the Republican candidate. The polls suggest at the moment he's leading in the key swing states by quite big margins. So it's all looking good. It is.
And one other thing to point out is that number of constituencies that Democratic Party, Joe Biden's party, take for granted African Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, young voters, independents. All of those core groups that the Democrats take for granted, President Trump is winning with. President Trump is actually winning with Hispanic voters right now. And so it just shows how far off things have fallen for Joe Biden.
And the whole axis of where the Republican Party is in terms of support has changed under Trump dramatically. The country club Republican Party is gone. in many, many ways. But Jason, looked at from the rest of the world, we've got a series of indictments here. The man is in court almost every week. His ability to campaign over the course of this year will be seriously curtailed. The case, particularly in Georgia, looks very awkward. How does Trump get through these legal difficulties?
Great question. So especially if you're looking from across the pond and wondering what's going on with
we can't believe it.
So one thing, I wouldn't cede that necessarily any of these cases on the criminal side or with the ballot access issues are going to be an issue this year. We don't know because of the timings with the appeals. The Supreme Court has to make some decisions about which cases can go forward and can't. So could there be cases in 2024? Yes. Is there a scenario that none of those cases actually come up? Absolutely. But I think that it's baked in the cake now to where voters see what's going on. The more that he goes up, the more they come after him with more cases.
Yeah.
And American voters are pretty smart. They can realize, wait a minute, why is all this happening now? Not several years ago. Why, or in some of these things, they're coming after him things like, decade old, decade and a half old. I think people get it and they realize that this is election interference.
Well, it's doing him no harm at the moment. Jason Miller, thank you very much indeed for joining me. We'll see you again over the course of the next few months.